Hello and welcome to Rebel Unicorn Crafts. Today we're going to be talking about painting clouds in watercolor. I know when I first got started, it seemed super daunting and really difficult, but it's actually quite simple. So I actually have 4.5-ish different techniques on how to actually paint some clouds into your watercolor skies. One of the tricks you're going to see here is we're not necessarily going to be painting the clouds, we're going to be revealing them from the sky. And I say it's 4.5 because a couple of them are just modifications on one of the techniques. So let's get going. If you want to practice this along with me, you're going to want kind of a medium blue color and kind of a medium saturation level. Nothing too saturated, nothing too light. We need enough contrast in order for these effects to actually make an impact. And we also want to, if you have a color of blue that you know is super staining, you want to avoid that. The very first technique is super duper simple, and you want to work kind of quick on this one because you want everything to stay wet enough for this to actually work. What you're going to do is place your color down all over wherever you're going to be placing it and where you want your clouds to be. Then you're going to take a piece of paper towel. My favorite paper towels for this are Bounty or whatever the generic that Costco has is. You're going to take one of those and then you're going to scrunch it up. You're going to tear it in half and then you're going to take that rough edge side and just press down, slightly shifting the direction of the paper towel so that you'll get slightly different shapes, and you can always tear off a little bit extra if you need to, if it's soaked up too much water or you want to change the shape a little bit. That is absolutely the best way for making big fluffy clouds. As you can probably tell when I said revealing, what I'm actually meaning is all of these are going to be lifting techniques. They're just going to be slightly different variations. So the second option is to lift with your brush. After you've placed your color down, but while it's still nice and wet, you're going to wash your brush off, then tap it so that it's damp but not sopping wet. We don't want to deposit water on, but we want it to be wet enough to where it's going to slide nicely over the paper. And you can make streaks with this and it will lift that color up, and that will give you those nice kind of high wind type clouds. Or you could do kind of similar fluffy clouds by just moving your brush around and being more methodical about your placement. Now, personally, in my opinion, I think fluffy clouds are easier to make with the paper towel technique, so I typically use this one just for those high wind ones, but you can definitely do it with a brush too. The third one is, I'm calling it its own one, but it could be a modification because it's a slight modification of the first. We're going to start the same way. Placing that blue down while it's still wet, we're going to tap and press with that rough edge side of the paper towel we've ripped. But rather than stopping there, then you're going to take the side and hold it at a slight angle, and you want to very lightly rest that rough edge of the paper towel down and swoop it down. This will give you something that kind of looks like a downpour or a rain burst, so these are great for rainy days. If you do this in kind of a gray-blue type sky, it looks absolutely beautiful. The fourth of these we're going to be revealing in a slightly different way. We're not necessarily lifting the color off, but we're going to be pushing it away. So what we're going to do, start the same way, place that color down, and this one we're going to start differing a little bit. While it's still damp on the page, then you're going to wash your brush, you're going to tap it off again so that it's not too wet, not too dry. Then you're going to wash your brush and then you want to tap it off so that there's still enough water in there that it will deposit some on the page, but not so much that it's going to be an uncontrollable amount of water and like really give you a big blob of water on there. Because we're just going to take the very tip of our brush, we're going to tap it into that wet-ish area, and as we do that, it's going to encourage these back runs that are going to create kind of the cloud type shapes, and it's going to push away that blue pigment to kind of reveal the white behind on the page. This will change a lot as it dries, so this one's really good for kind of mimicking the unpredictable nature of clouds, and if you kind of want to let go of some control. Then the next two are the real 0.5 or 0.25 ones, where I can't quite classify them as an individual technique because we're going to be doing the same thing we did on the fourth one, but rather than putting in clean water, we're going to actually put in some colors. These are really good for adding to kind of the bottom of your clouds if you want to show that darkness at the bottom. One thing you want to do to increase your control over how much pigment you have in your brush, I typically like to mix up a darker color and then I'll smear it on a flat surface on my palette so that it's kind of thin, and then I let it basically dry there, because once I add in my blue, let it soak in for a minute, then I can wash my brush and I can very, very lightly grab just little amounts of that pigment so I have more control over how much I'm actually going to be depositing in within that wet area of the blue. And you just tap it in. Very similar to the previous one, but we're adding in some color like a gray. And modifying that one even further, you can do this with bright colors. You can see I placed it in with the pink and that pushed the blue away. And then I even went back and I washed my brush again before everything dried too much. And then I just dropped some water in there, which will kind of give some variation between the white, the blue, and those pink colors. You need to remember to work fairly quickly on this one. There's this real sweet spot you need to find, because if you continue to do this once it dries too much, then you're going to get some really harsh lines and it's not going to have the same effect. So this one, it's better to walk away while you're still ahead rather than continue working if you think your paper is starting to dry too much. Taking one final look at all of these different techniques, you can combine these on one composition. They're just so fun to do. Clouds are one of my favorite things to paint in watercolor, or not paint, reveal, I suppose. And when I discovered I didn't have to directly paint them, that made my life so much easier. So I hope this was super helpful to you. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite technique for painting clouds with watercolor is. And if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I hope that you have a magically creative day.